with the Morning Magazine. Here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 as well as on the web at WFHR.com. And we also welcome our friends from River Cities Media who are here digitally recording our session, and it's because Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Verwink begins a second term in office officially today. And here on the Morning Magazine, a second term on the Morning Magazine, he'll be here once a month to take your questions and answer your concerns. And with that, we welcome the Mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, Zach Verwink. Good morning, Your Honor.
Carl, good morning.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Second two-year term.
That's
so
right.
Let's let you give a little bit of an inaugural address, if you would like, your goals for your new term in office.
Well, it's kind of surreal to be closing one chapter already and starting another 2 years in, and certainly appreciate the confidence and the support of the residents in our community, recognizing that we've laid some nice foundational work over the last 2 years, and really now is the opportunity for us to build on it and to capture and kind of realize those fruits of our labor over the last 2 years. So very excited about the next 2 years in many respects. One of which continuously focusing on our rapid improvement, the Lean Six Sigma initiative, to train more city employees and to launch more projects and to complete the projects that were started just a couple of months ago. So streamlining our operations is still going to be a core priority internally. There's always more new, more effective, more efficient ways for any business or organization or government, what have you, to do things better. So we're looking forward to that and to continuously be showing the community the results of that initiative. So that's kind of internally, externally, and that's what I came from this morning. That's why it's on first thing out of my mouth, because I just came from that group. The next round of training has begun. We've got 19 trainees from 9 different city departments in water and light that are participating, so we're glad to see the participation is strong there. Beyond the piece with rapid improvement and Lean Six Sigma training, obviously you've heard me talk a lot about, we talked a lot on the radio show about, too, is that of our local economy, is what are things that our city government can be doing to generate new economic activity or to build on the existing economic activity in our community so people are able to ultimately create jobs. And my philosophy on that has been from the very beginning. It's a two-pronged approach, working with existing businesses to understand their challenges and opportunities, recognizing that it isn't always that government, a lot of the buzz gets surrounding red tape and regulation, but when you still talk to a good variety of businesses, that's not always what's the first thing out of their mouth. They're always talking about growth and opportunities related to growth, less about regulation. While it's still important to them, it's not as important as it is for us to support their opportunities, whether it's getting them additional capital so they can finance maybe a startup that they're looking to launch or an expansion. That banks are not lending in traditional ways that they did maybe when they first started in business, and so they're looking for more creative ways to finance deals and projects. So our local government's been very kind of astute in trying to figure out what is it that we can offer our local business community in terms of creative lending, creative funding, one of which is leveraging state resources. There's also resources within WHEDA, Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, our regional revolving loan fund, local lending institutions. So if there's an opportunity, it's our due diligence then to make sure that those businesses in our community have access and are aware of those programs that are available to them. And then capitalize on tax credits that the state and the federal government institute tax credits for certain growth opportunities in certain industries. And so it's up to us to kind of make sense of them, because a lot of times that's complex and very difficult to navigate. And so our hope is over the next 2 years to connect with our business community in new ways to bring these programs right to them. That if there's a growth opportunity that could potentially create jobs in our community, that we're right on top of it and right there next to the business. And then supporting resident engagement opportunities, finding ways for our residents to continuously be engaged and to participate. We're seeing it in projects like the Tribune Building Project, which is happening in the downtown area. Very exciting to watch that project and to see residents joining, and really owe it to Encourage for leading the charge and giving residents the opportunity to participate. It's kind of a very unique, one-of-a-kind type of project in our community that I'm very excited to see. We've got projects like the Ward 1 Neighborhood Watch and Neighborhood Cleanup, which we've talked a lot about on your show, but scaling that across the city, that there isn't just Ward 1 that needs to be maybe given a little bit more attention, but there's other parts of the community. Having knocked doors for the last number of months in areas of the community, there's a lot of area for improvement, and so we're excited to now have a full-time ordinance control officer that can now scale that. So in a nutshell, those are really the three areas, right? Streamlining our city government operations for more effectiveness, building a stronger local economy, and from my perspective, finding more ways for residents to be engaged and to participate. And then we talked a lot about quality of life, that there's always more we can do to make our community a more attractive place for residents and for visitors to locate or to visit. And along with that is businesses, right? If you have residents and individuals looking to locate in a community, that's when they start creating businesses right here or move their businesses here as well.
Okay. Last night, the old council wrapped up its business, and the new council was sworn in. First off, let's wrap up some of the old business. You actually had to cast a tie-breaking vote last night. Mm-hmm. And why don't you explain that issue? It had to do with 2nd Street.
Yeah, 2nd Avenue. I was expecting a tie, quite frankly. I had notes actually on, if I were to break a tie, what were really my reasons and rationale for doing so. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind that the council was probably pretty split on the issue. It was a very, so I'll intro the issue and then we'll go into a little bit. 2nd Avenue, heading into the roundabout or away from the roundabout towards the Riverview Expressway. Speed limit was changed from 35 to 25 back in 2008, and since that time, city staff, attorney, engineering, the police chief, all had indicated that there were issues with that. Number one, the Common Council was deemed they didn't have the authority to do so in the first place because there was not an engineering study that backed it up. So engineering obviously shared that perspective. The city attorney shared her perspective, and the police chief had a real issue there because if the city was in fact not allowed to lower the speed limit there, the police department could not enforce the speed limit. So whether people were driving 25 or 35 or 45 or anything in between, we had a situation where people could fight the citations and the city was in the wrong. So finally, that issue was allowed to get back on an agenda. Alderperson Young referred it back to the Public Works Committee. Over the course of 5 years, 5 or 6 years, that issue had come to the city but never gotten a hearing again back on an agenda and on the full council. So last night was finally the time where it failed to get through the Public Works recommendation was to keep the speed limit as is for many reasons, and there's valid reasons regarding safety, just like any other corridor. If we were going to debate a certain speed limit on any stretch, whether it's A Street or West Grand Avenue, etc. So that issue was brought back to the full council. A couple of council members who voted against it originally voted to make the motion to raise it to 35, and it was seconded by the second member, Alderperson Nash. And then subsequently a passionate debate followed regarding what the city's plans were to do to fix that corridor, recognizing that there probably were some concerns about safety, and there's things the city could have done, and there were things talked about back in 2008 that may not have been done yet until 2014. So I cast the tie vote. Tie vote was, in fact, to support the increase to 35 miles per hour. First, because now we have a speed limit we can enforce. We couldn't write citations previously, but now we can. We can enforce that stretch once it gets reposted back to 35. Subsequently, an engineering study can be done to determine whether it should be lowered, which would be the prudent and the right thing to do. The third reason I supported it was that stretch will be chip sealed this spring, and there's enough space in the paved road surface to shift the lanes toward the river, so away from the curb and the residences on the side. As is in Port Edwards, if you drive beyond the city limits and into Port Edwards, there's a kind of a buffer with paint. So we're hopeful that we can shift that as much as 3 feet in some areas. It narrows a little bit, but so that was the other reason. And then the other issue is post office boxes, for us to try to move the post office boxes off of 2nd Avenue so it's safer for those getting their mail. Because it's true, the traffic is very close to the curb there. There isn't a lot of space. But because the northbound lane does have extra space in it, we're able to shift the paint and the pavement markings and kind of fix that. The DOT has looked at the issue and is still looking at the issue. In fact, we're meeting with them. It was scheduled for next week. It was canceled. They weren't ready for the meeting. Now into May, we're going to be meeting on the subject because the state understands there's an issue with the traffic coming off the expressway bridge. When they put in that second lane, the traffic has to merge right, which is not natural for the driver. So that's the issue with 2nd Avenue.
Okay, well, we have our first caller, and I should mention that the phone lines are open at 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. With that, we go to our phone lines, and good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Verwink.
Good morning, Mayor. I have a request. When you meet with the city department that paints the streets and that, if you could have them paint the curve line on the intersection by Aldi's there, because if you're heading north on 13 and go to make the left-hand curve, I don't know how many times I've seen where people cross over and they're 3-4 feet over the line, and the other one would be the one over by Home Depot there. They do the same thing there. So if you could have them get out there, when the weather gets better and remark those because they're faded quite a bit. I think it would be a good safety issue to put in place.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. I'll pass that information along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your call.
Yep, bye.
And Mayor, prior to our show, we got a call in, and their question is this: is there any update with what's happening with the former Wendy's restaurant building near Rapids Mall? Another restaurant reopened for a while and then posted a notice to reopen in early April.
So have not heard anything. It's still under current ownership, or the ownership that had been previously. I understand Crown's Fried Chicken is not going to reopen in that location, and I haven't heard specific reasons. I mean, there's been some conclusions drawn based on that space, but nothing formal from the previous occupant, the tenant that was in there that operated Crown's Fried Chicken. That individual does own another restaurant in town, the Checkers, I believe, on A Street, is owned by that same person. So nothing on that space, and I guess we can talk a little bit about the mall right away. There has been some circumstances around the mall, and Mall Management is now a company out of Milwaukee that has actually been, in the interim, been appointed to manage some of the mall activities, and so still watching that issue very closely because I think, in the near future we're going to have, some issues on our hands. There's been some court action on that property, so we're just watching that very closely. We don't have a lot of answers right now, more questions than answers, but we do know more information that the mall property. Now that Wendy's parcel is not part of the mall ownership. That's local ownership, as is the car wash, the gas station, etc. So, but no, nothing on the former Wendy's space at this point to report.
Okay. With regards to the mall, what is its future? We got a group of doctors, I guess, out of California that own it?
Well, there's a lot of speculation around who's in the ownership group. As I alluded to, there's been some activity in the court system regarding the mall property, and that's what we're watching. And as I mentioned, we don't have a lot of answers on that. There's been questions surrounding, the bank note on it or the loan, and some issues with repayment potentially on that. So we're just watching that issue, and some of that information is public record, and so we've been parsing through that information. Some of it is which it's remained to be seen, and so I think their next court hearing is in the summer, early summer. So watching that closely, and in terms of the property itself, part of it is having there's definitely advantages to having local ownership and local management, because once you've got someone there on the property on a daily basis, they're much more in tune to not only the existing tenants' needs, but also the attraction efforts. I mean, they're able to speak for the mall on a much better basis than somebody that might be in California or another part of the country. But yeah, that has been an ongoing issue, and we've had an ongoing dialogue with mall ownership up until a couple of months ago, and until that point, I was assured that there was some conversation regarding the former Yonkers space and the attraction of a tenant there. The city had helped out the mall, or assisted the mall a little bit with separating that parcel so that way it could be marketed appropriately. problem was we never heard back from the mall ownership, and so we knew that there was something else afoot, and that's when you start doing some open record searching and you can find out some more information.
An interesting situation. Let's get back to the phone lines. Good morning. You're on the air with the mayor. Hello, you're on.
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, hello. I just got a question for the mayor. If he's done anything to try to keep Staples in town, and it's very disappointing that they're going to be closed down May 31st. I was hoping maybe the mayor would go down there and try to keep him in town.
Okay. Well,
Thanks for the call. On the issue of retention of Staples, we were notified. Actually, the listing for that space was almost a number of months ago already. That space was already.
It was
available.
shortly after. There was a story on CBS Radio, and our listeners may remember Staples announced that it was going to be going primarily to an online type of a business, like a lot of other office type places are going, and that they were going to be closing.
Hundreds of stores.
Hundreds of stores across the country.
Yeah, and this is part of the thing. In fact, by 2015 is when they're going to have the full list of announcements closed. There was some pieces on this that over a year ago already that were questions surrounding their lease. Their lease expires, and they've decided not to renew it. Similar situation with the Yonkers space when that space was vacated, that these big box national retailers, if they don't meet certain criteria of sales volumes, they won't stay in a market. And I know that firsthand from a retail business that retail brick and mortar, when you're competing against online, it is incredibly difficult.
And a lot of companies like your Staples or your other big ones, Office Max, they're going away from brick and mortar to an online presence, basically, because it's easier. Businesses just, that's how business is done between businesses. What kind of challenges does that pose for the city?
Absolutely.
I mean, the economy is changing.
Yes, it is, no question. And so us as communities across the country, right? I mean, we heard with Radio Shack, and we're very concerned about the lease potential there too, because they've also made an announcement nationally that they will close hundreds of stores this year. What does that do to communities like ours? Well, it doesn't help the supply of vacant commercial space. Particularly with the Staples space, to answer the caller's question, whether or not there's been efforts to retain them, yes. The short answer is yes. Had conversations not only with the real estate broker who deals with their store footprint and the leases, and there was simply no ability for us to extend their lease. They were entertaining for a while a smaller footprint of that location, so continuing to have a presence here, but they finally made the decision that they just couldn't support that store. The economics of it were not what they needed. But it creates a lot of challenges for us, as we're seeing. We just talked about the mall, and we talk about other retail spaces. However, on that space, there is a real estate broker that is actively marketing that. It's a large space, as we're all aware, and there is a national retailer that has been looking at the city, but they weren't sure if they should build or if they should locate in an existing space, and this is an opportunity for them.
Okay, let's get back to the... Okay. Stay online, folks. Be patient. We'll get to your phone calls. 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. After the old council wrapped up business, the new council was sworn in. You took your oath of office and the like. Could you give us some of the chair people for the council?
Yeah, well, and before we move off the previous council, the 2013-14 council, there were two other issues that I think residents may want to know something about.
Okay, go right ahead.
One of which was the Planning Commission report on the conditional use for the potential occupancy of the former Reynolds hardware business. That will be, if all goes well with their business plan and everything, but the city council did approve a conditional use to allow a vet clinic within that district. So, from a redevelopment standpoint, I think all of us have been concerned, as we've seen with some of these blighted or vacant properties, what's going to happen, what can we do with them? They're functionally obsolete in some respect, but here's a good use for redevelopment of that vacant parcel that I think will be assisted. Now, obviously, there was passionate debate about that issue as well, and the city, quite frankly, was not in a position to deny that because it was a conditional use. That use was allowed there, and the question is, what conditions do we want to apply on that? So the staff made some recommendations, and that was approved. Other issues in finance and property had a couple of special events that were approved. Public Easter egg hunt here on April 19th.
What about the Rafters proposal for their the expansion of the stadium to better suit handicapped fans.
Very excited about that. That's going to happen to the south of the grandstand.
On the first base side.
First base side, correct. There's going to be a ramp and then an area made for people with disabilities. As anyone knows, if you were in a wheelchair or operated, help somebody move the wheelchair up into the grandstand, it was very difficult because the incline was not quite to spec. And this will now better accommodate people with disabilities, with mobile disabilities, to be able to get into the stands and watch the game. There's also some plans to institute the use of iPads and some other things. So
technology, they'll be able to watch, see a broadcast of the game, and there'll be a big screen set up to protect that area as well as the playground area.
That's right. Yeah, putting a nice net.
And here's the thing: is it's the Northwoods League Foundation is paying for it, not the Raptors or the city. I mean, that's pretty nice when a city can get an improvement like that. And it's because they're looking at this as an example of what can be done to an older baseball stadium.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is this another call?
Yep. Let's get right to another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning. I can barely hear you.
Well, I'm right here.
Oh, my. Could you tell us how we could go about getting closed captioning on our Channel 3 for the events that are happening? Many of us are hearing impaired, and we would wonder how costly it could be and what does it entail, and I'll listen off the air. And thank you again, Mayor, for your dedication and election, and we'll be watching with very interested sight. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your call.
Sure.
Something we'll definitely consider. Give that to Tom over at the community access station to see, if there's any way for us to close caption meetings. I know last night we had some difficulty with the council microphones and getting the volume adjusted, so it's kind of a cat and mouse game with that all the time. But no, I think it's a great suggestion. And I don't know, on the replay if there's a way for them to institute.
There
that,
might be.
we
Could see. I don't know how they do it, but. The technology exists. The question is how expensive is it?
Yeah, exactly. So very excited. Back to the Rafters thing. Obviously the grant from the Northwoods League Foundation, recognizing that people with disabilities are just as well as anyone else that would want to watch a baseball game. The other thing with Witter Field that we're excited about is, while they're making the improvements for baseball, that is city property, as you've alluded to, and it's really becoming more of a turnkey venue for events, whether it's in the spring, summer, or fall, to complement baseball, really as an events venue. And I know we've been talking with the Rafters about how else can we, outside of baseball, attract sort of events to the facility, whether it's concerts or whether it's festivals or something like that. So that's something that's been in the works for some time now, and I think we're going to have something yet this fall to unveil related to Witter Field.
Yeah, because you're developing quite a stadium complex there, and you could have some concerts or something. You got the deck and everything else. So, it could be, like you said, an attraction. And we're going to have the carnival there and with the Cranberry Blossom Fest, and as well as the Arts and Crafts Fair. So, I mean, it's becoming. We've had Winter Festival there. I mean, it's getting more and more use. Which reminds me, what's the shape of the warming house after this winter?
Well, the water main froze, which fed all of that. So they haven't had water for some time now. That's been thawed, from what I understand, or very close with the warm weather we had last week. That they were able to get that up and running. But no, that obviously, when residents had issues, the city had issues as well with frozen water mains and frozen water pipes. It really was a mess.
Okay. Well, we got to take our first break, but if the phone lines are open, it's your chance to talk to Mayor Verwink as he begins his second 2-year term in office. Your suggestions for the mayor, comments, or even well wishes. Here on the Morning Magazine, as always, it's brought to you by Riverview Medical Center. With you, it's personal and comfort in.
Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thanks, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from River Cities Media, who are digitally recording our session for later air on River Cities Community Access Television. Mayor Zach Verwink is officially beginning his second 2-year term in office today. This is his first full day of his new term after being sworn in last night to his new term, as well with the old council, but with the new council, I should say. But before we get back to talking about the new council, let's talk about Something that happened last night involving health insurance. Why don't you explain it? And you have a decision to make, Your Honor.
Yeah, so there was a referral made by Alderperson Nash to the HR committee, which he chaired the previous month, to take a look at the city health insurance plan. The city made changes to the health insurance plan about a year ago, recognizing we were faced with a $700,000 increase through our renewal, which would have been a 25% increase, so a $700,000 increase to the city. At which point we all, staff and city council, agreed that it was not something we could withstand. So changes had to be made to the health insurance plan, and so the staff met with our insurer, our administrator, and made a recommendation to the council. The council was on board, made the changes to institute a health savings account, an HSA, which many people in our community are familiar with because they have those at their employer probably today. Many of the employers in our community have them. Then, at which point we had to enroll people in that plan, and so there were, we instituted the plan. Employees enrolled in the plan. Then last month, I should say, there was a referral to the HR committee to consider a second contribution to those health savings accounts, those that were enrolled in them. Water and Light Utility had made a decision previously for 2 years, which I was of the position that it probably wasn't the most fiscally responsible thing to do, given the fact that every year you face renewal, and at renewal time you take a look at what your claims experience has been. We all go to the doctor and incur claims, and somebody's got to pick up the tab for that, whether it's the employee or whether it's the employer. And being that we're self-insured, which really doesn't matter in this situation, that the claim is a claim, somebody's got to pay it. So our renewal is until the summer, but Alderperson Nash felt very strongly that our employees should be treated the same way that Water and Light employees should be treated, and Water and Light had in fact gone a step further than what the city had gone, because the city felt they needed some more time to review this, which we didn't have to make a decision, frankly, until this summer.
What did Water and Light do?
To encourage people to sign up for the health savings account, we made an initial contribution to the health savings account. So if you're on a single plan, you got a $500, and then a family $1,000. And so we, based on how long people committed to that, the contributions varied. So Water and Light went a step further, recognizing that it was a change, and I'm not so certain why they took the leap right away to preclude their future budgeting and other things to that. Again, it comes down to fiscal responsibility. If we're going to be responsible for whether it's fees in the case of Water and Light or in case of taxes for the city, that we take a look at these things on an annual basis through the budget process or at renewal time. Well, last night's decision was very interesting. You could obviously watch the politics at work, and there was a motion made to match what Water and Light's contributions were for our city employees, which, not to say we wouldn't have considered at renewal time. We have no idea what our claims experience has been under the previous plan. Our renewal year is July 1st, or date is July 1st, so we will be getting that renewal information in the coming month or so, hopefully. And we hadn't had that information last night, so the cost to the taxpayer is $225,000 for that motion last night, and it was very quick. The decision I'm faced with right now is whether or not I should veto that action. I'm not committed on it one way or the other on it. I just want to make sure that residents are questioning their alderperson's decision and why to vote for it.
Well, here, I'll give you my opinion. A rush decision like that to spend that amount of money seems to me a little bit irresponsible. Well, and as a taxpayer, I can't imagine making it. I think if you got a renewal coming up, my 2-bit is that you veto it and look at this thing when the renewal is. I mean, to rush something through and spend that amount of money, to me, just sounds crazy. That's the kind of stuff that drives taxpayers and people nutty about government. That's at right. All levels when they hear that.
Well, it's concerning, and as I had mentioned, my position would be, one, we've got bargaining units, police and fire units that will be heading into negotiations this fall, and Alderperson Nash has been a part of the negotiations in the past through his participation on the HR committee. He had some rationale about the city receiving net savings on some changes related to Act 10, and I certainly valid feelings. I just feel that the decision was much too premature. That we don't sign up and pass a budget before we've actually gone through the exercise to build the budget. And
Yes.
it's the same thing with health insurance. So
Yeah,
very curious to know how residents feel on that particular
yeah,
issue.
give the mayor, if you got a feeling about this morning, give the 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. To me, that's putting the cart before the horse. That's I'm just thinking out of how an average person does their budget and Okay, well, who are going to be with the new council? We got some new members.
We do.
We said first off, you also honored the members that were leaving. First off, let's pay them their due respects and thank you for their years of service to the city.
Yeah, Alderperson Hokamp, a tremendous amount of years. She's still obviously serving on the county board, so she's not stepping away, as she reminds us entirely, which is great to see that she's still dedicated to the cause and representing the city in one way and through the county board. Very appreciative. She 28 years of service to the county board or to the city council. That's pretty incredible. Alderperson Young, Jean Young, has stepped off. She had 10 years, and then Alderperson Nash, who had, I believe, 15 years. So lots of years of experience and decision making, and with them comes lots of history and institutional knowledge. So, but with it at the same time comes the opportunity for a lot of fresh blood and new ideas and energy, which we obviously welcome. And as somebody that's been elected relatively recently, and not only in this election but previously, that we welcome a lot of fresh ideas and perspectives. So we've got a number of committee assignments that have changed, and I'll read those off for our listeners in case they feel passionate about a particular issue that may come before a committee. On the Human Resources Committee, we have Alderperson Todd Furkey, who was newly elected, Alderperson Chad Worrell, and Alderperson Greg Hepp. And Chad Worrell will be chairing the HR committee going forward for the next year. Public Works, Alderperson Kellogg remained on Public Works. Alderperson Rayom also remained on Public Works. And Alderperson Kirkpatrick will sit on that committee, chaired by Alderperson Rayom. And that is the Public Works Committee. In Finance and Property, Alderperson Terry Dolan, which is a newly elected, will be serving on Finance and Property. Alderperson Chad Worrell, also on Finance and Property. And Alderperson Jim Stack, who will chair the committee on Finance and Property. So, with the reorganizational committee and new members, we also have new committee assignments. So, very much so look forward to maybe setting aside previous practices that may not have been that great, and now with a new opportunity to maybe improve the way our committees work. And so we're very excited about that too.
Who's going to be the Common Council president?
Common Council president was elected by Chad Worrell was elected as council president.
Okay, so folks, Chad Worrell is your council president for the new session. You mentioned rapid improvement and in your just latest community update. First off, if I get these, and maybe we could let folks know how they could get these community updates or
join the list. You can go to the city website. If you have internet access, visit the city website. You'll see a Meet the Mayor page right on the homepage, and you can link through and read the community update. It's also connected to a blog, so I post a community update about every week, and then if there's different subjects throughout the week that I want to write about, then I will put it on a blog. These are available to be mailed if people want a printed copy mailed to their house, or if there's a place in the community where people get their information that they want it posted. It's posted in city departments now. We can post it in bulletin boards. In fact, looking at the Lowell Center and Centralia and the mall and other places where there's free bulletin boards open to the community that are free to be posted. We're very interested in getting that out. But and every week I highlight meetings that I have, people that I host at City Hall. So this one was kind of a longer one. A lot of activity in the last 7 days.
Well, and with rapid improvement, it mentions here you have 19 trainees from 9 city departments taking part in the fundamentals. Is this the newest group?
This is the newest group. It's a new round of training. It's only going to be a 4-week training as opposed to a 16-week training, so much more condensed, focused on the fundamentals. That this group will not be certified in Greenbelt certification, which is what the certification level that Midstate has put on this. So we're using Midstate again for the training, and it was great because this training actually was turnback dollars, meaning there were some additional grant dollars that were not utilized within the state technical college system for this Watt grant and that we had used previously. So kind of a bonus to the city that the city taxpayers did not have to pick up the lion's share, that it was actually funded by a state grant that came through our local technical college system.
Okay, so we'll see. It will be interesting to see what happens with that. We got to take one more quick break, and then we'll be back. We're going to be back in 1 minute, folks, with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Verwink here on the Morning Magazine. The show, we're visiting with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Verwink. The phone lines are still open, but we were talking about the new 19 trainees from 9 city departments in the Lean Six Sigma program, the Rapid Improvement program. What's their project?
So they're working through the examining the long grass weeds enforcement process by ordinance control. When the grass starts growing again, if it ever does, and the snow ever decides not to come, one of the things the city gets a lot of contact from residents about is the issue with long grass and weeds. And there are many delays in the system, and it's a very large process because when a resident generates the complaint, it goes to ordinance control. Well, ordinance control then will inspect it to verify that, in fact, there's an issue. That issue then, the resident or the occupied homeowner or occupant of the home has 5 days to mow it. So you go from, let's say, 1 day, maybe 2 days, 3 days. By the time the ordinance control guy gets out there and looks at it, 5 more days for them to fix it. If they don't fix it, how many days you've already accumulated, potentially 10 or more. Well, then it goes to Park and Rec to mow. And so Park and Rec department, the parks guys will then fit it into their schedule and their routine and then mow it. So sometimes it can take as long as 2 weeks for these things to be brought into compliance. Well, a lot of times we know the grasses are, that's 2 weeks of longer grass, right? And so the problem is exacerbated. So the hope is to bring it much closer to the 5 days given for compliance. So on that 5th or 6th day after they've been given notice that, boom, it then gets solved.
Where is this problem most prevalent? Is it in vacant properties or vacant land? Some of the
it's a mixture. It's a mixture. Some of them are chronic issues where we have the repeat offenders every year, and so as soon as now that we've got a full-time ordinance control officer on staff, so we're going to have much more effective ordinance control. Kind of a reminder to friends and neighbors to make sure that these things are taken care of. That after so many inches, off the top of my head I can't remember, but it is vacant properties or foreclosed on properties. We don't have a ton of them, but it's also those repeat offenders.
Okay, you and I have talked about this before, and we have a lot of older housing in this area, and when the Great Recession hit, a lot of people took in the hard. Financially, and I've talked to people, and I'm one of them, where you were planning to do stuff, and all of a sudden you can't. And we're going to put it off. And now you're looking at restarting. Is there a way to, we're talking about businesses, but is there a way to help homeowners?
It's a great question. We do. In fact, the city has a fund to assist in any sort of repairs or maintenance that would happen to properties across the city. And while there's a waiting list, it's something, though, that if there's a repair that people qualify for assistance, that they can get on the list and have those repairs performed on their house. Because the last thing, the city wants to do is start enforcing people when we know, in fact, they can't afford to make the repairs or fix it in the first place. So one of the charges by the full-time ordinance control officer that we've kind of related to the Ward 1 cleanup and that sort of thing is to connect these residents with programs that can help them, right? Because when a home is helped, the rest of the neighborhood in the block improves, and the rest of the vibrancy of the community is improved.
And people might not know.
Right.
I didn't know this existed.
That's right. Yeah, so minor code violations, shingles, siding, porches, peeling paint, all those things are code violations if they get to a certain degree, and the city does have the authority to put people on notice and to warn them and to cite them.
Okay. So we're going to be doing that. When will the full-time officer be?
He started 2 weeks ago, so a week ago Monday. Ray Starks is the ordinance control officer. Glad to have him on staff now, and he can be contacted by calling City Hall, and complaints can be generated directly with him in that department, or you can go online and generate a ordinance complaint, and then in which he will then inspect, and then it'll get into the pipeline.
Okay. With this winter, brush pickup, and now we just had some heavy wet snow, which did a number on trees and branches, and the like. I know that's one of the projects you're looking at in terms of the city's brush pickup. But what can you tell residents about as we eventually get to our spring cleanup?
There was a notice posted. I happened to catch it in the buyer's guide. I don't always read it thoroughly, but I did catch our city notice in there. The schedule has been published for monthly brush pickup as well as leaf pickup and compost pickup. You can go onto the city website if you've got access, or you can call the city garage to get the dates. We do request that people call in and request a brush pickup so we can accurately identify who we need to stop at, so we're not missing piles along the way. So that can be done. So we request residents have them laid parallel to if there's brush and branches. We don't do lot clearings. We don't do stumps. We don't do big trees. It's more meant for light yard clearing or cleaning and that sort of thing. So that can be laid out at the curb. And so the brush within the next 2 weeks, weather permitting, but within the next 2 weeks, both leaf compost pickup will occur as well as brush pickup. So we'd encourage residents to, when the weekend rolls around, to take the time to get those things in order, so that way the city street crews can take care of those pickups.
How tough was this winter on your budget, snow removal budget?
Well, we haven't closed out because we're still plowing snow. What the full final number was, there are cities in the state, though, that are actually counties that are pooling potentially for FEMA resources, because some municipalities just were not weathered or we're not in the position to weather the issues this year. We had a surplus from previous years from snow removal, so thankfully we were able to tap into some reserves. However, the reserves have been wiped out, so we no longer have those available to us just because of the sheer amount of snow, regularity of snow we got this winter. But no, there are municipalities around the state, and we're actually going to submit our numbers as well once we get them turned out to potentially get funding from FEMA to assist our local taxpayers, so we're not burdened with the extra cost.
Yeah, I tell you, this has been an incredible winter. And with that, let's get some updates on the East Commerce Center on that site. It's being marketed by the state. Are we seeing any?
Haven't had any notable any inquiries since the last radio show and the last time we talked about it, which is you're going to have periods where we don't have any inquiries. The facility over here in the Westside Industrial Park and the former Ruan facility is up and working. I mean, they've got contractors in and out of there that have been doing the work. Also met with another Westside business here since our last radio show that's looking at building a new facility here, which is exciting because obviously they're growing, and that's a good thing. They haven't done any projections in terms of when that might occur, but that also is in the works. And we've talked a little bit about, in fact, we breezed over it, but the previous council meeting, talking more about vacant city property. So whether it's small parcels of land, the council agreed last night that we can quit claim those and get those back onto the tax roll, that a lot of remnants around town that are very small and unbuildable by themselves. And then the city council also agreed to allow staff to start marketing some of the additional parcels, and then they would have to come back to council for full approval. So parking lots, anything that the city staff has kind of determined that there might be a low or underutilized that could be framed for development, that's what we're looking at.
Okay. With the winter, and it's been forecast that cities and all sorts of municipalities, states, and what have you, are all going to be busy repairing roads and highways because of all the cold weather did a number. And driving around town, you can see a lot of potholes. You're seeing parking lots, even private parking lots, that look like they're going to be in need of repair. So how are we going to attack this problem?
Well, for us, it's and that's the conversation I had with our street superintendent yesterday, was to what level are we identifying or measuring what the maintenance cost is of what we do on an annual year. So we can say after a tough winter, we're going to triple or double what our street maintenance would be. Right now, frankly, we don't have that information available to us. So it's difficult to say, well, Carl, this winter, this spring, we're going to do 20% more street maintenance because frankly, we had a tough winter and the plows were hard on it because of the amount of snow we received and the frequency of it. So we're working on data collection so we can better understand to what extent, how much activity do we, or how much do we spend on street maintenance, so we can fluctuate that. So in tough years like this year, we can say, we're going to double it. But I can't tell you that we can do that now because we just don't have the information.
So how are you going about getting that information?
Just down to measurement, right? So measuring how long it takes to fill a certain
Okay.
size or certain area of whether it's potholes in the simplest form or joint repair and those sorts of things. We've got a decent understanding of what it is on a general sort of terms, but nothing very specific. So from a budgeting standpoint, it's hard to go to the city council and say, you know what, we need an extra $20,000 or whatever the number might be to do additional street maintenance or repair. But my hope is, and that's kind of our charge this year, is data collection. Do as much data collection as we can so we can better understand what's the true cost or investment that we need to make sure our streets are back to par.
Obviously, some major projects are already underway, as anybody who's driven by the courthouse area knows. But what are going to be some of the other major ones? Or maybe we could use that as a topic of a future show. We could, definitely.
We could, in fact, bring an engineer on and maybe Public Works, any members of staff from there to talk about the project. So obviously the roundabout project's underway. The Solaris got a jump on their process, and it kind of surprised all of us because they closed the street and they were ready to do work, and the city hadn't been quite put on notice. We knew it was coming, we just didn't know when, and when that weather broke, they really were ready to get in there and get started. So that project is now closed. I don't have a completion on that. I mean, it's all weather permitting, but there's some targets yet of early summer where that project will be finished. So we're looking forward to that.
I noticed this morning you had another one of your coffees, and are you going to be continuing that throughout?
Yeah, absolutely. We had it at Grace's Family Restaurant this morning. I had 8 residents participate and ask many questions from speed limit to across the board. So it was a good opportunity for residents to show up and ask questions. But every 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to get those scheduled. So they'll be at various places across the community, and I post them always in my community update. We also do a press release to the newspaper. Whether or not they print it, it's up to them.
We get something from you. I also get something in my email. We put it in our community calendar.
Perfect.
So we be listening on the community calendar both during the Good Morning Show and also during my noon report. If the mayor's having a coffee, we'll let you know where it is and what the hours.
Excellent. Perfect.
But people are just welcome to show up and have a cup of coffee or maybe breakfast and say, Your Honor, I have some issues.
Yes, absolutely. And then it's the best way to do it. I mean, I want to be as approachable and accessible as possible. My door is always open, so if people don't want to call, they can always send me an email. Call my office, 421-8202. That's me directly. I can't answer your phone now because I'm at the radio show. So if you're listening right now, but always open to meet with residents to hear their concerns or suggestions. A lot of ideas floating out there, and I always love to hear those as well.
In terms of your discussions with business people, what initiatives might we see coming out shortly as a result of the discussions you were having before the election and since? With business people talking to you, here are the problems we see with City Hall as it relates to getting the economy jump-started.
Well, one of the big issues that we've identified for city services, we've talked a bit about getting city services online. So in the last month, we kicked off the Get Your Business Online initiative, which was for area businesses raising awareness to tools that might be free to them to get their businesses online and noticed, because businesses that are online are twice as likely to create jobs and grow twice as fast and all of that. So it's a simple initiative, but it's meant to raise awareness of people to businesses in our community, both here and not here yet. But then walking the talk from City Hall's perspective, what can we do to get these city services online? So you, from anywhere in the country or in your own community or any time of the day or night, can access city services. So that's something that's going to continue to be a priority, because business owners don't operate on an 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 or 7:30 to 4:30 schedule like City Hall may. And so this will be much more accessible for them, so they can approach these things at any time of the day.
Yeah, one of the things, the complaints you always hear of, well, I'd like to get a project started, but it takes forever to get a permit.
Yeah, and you can pull building permits online. You can submit building plans and those sorts of things. We're looking at ways to better incentivize those sorts of things. We're also approaching, and nothing's been proposed, but talking about how we can better incentivize development. What sort of incentives can we institute? So whether it's residential building, which it's hard to incentivize that. I mean, you've got to set some really tight thresholds, but that's something that's possible. But job creation is an easy one on the business side side of things, that if you're going to grow a business, if you're going to create so much in tax base, that's new tax base, that's something that's very interested to the city. And same thing goes for job creation, that not always when business expand that they create jobs. And so we want to make sure we're rewarding both. That job creation is obviously our preferred method, but if they're going to add to the tax base in our community, all the better.
Yeah.
Everyone wins.
Well, yeah. When a business grows, I don't care if it's 1 or 2 jobs. It's still 2 jobs that didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's always good news. Well, Your Honor, I appreciate the time. Again, we wish you well, and we're going to continue the tradition during your second 2-year term, as we had with all mayors. Mayor Verwink will be here at this time every month on this Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, this is the third Wednesday of the month. Mark it down on your calendar. Will be Mayor Verwink's full hour here on the Morning Magazine, and as always, we'll open up the phone lines. With that, sir, I'll let you get back to doing the important work of the city, and
thank you.
I thank you for your time.
Carl, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for listening.
Okay, take care. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's edition of the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Riverview Medical Center and Comfort Air.